heard this for many, many years, decades. And today we're going to go into a deep dive and deep conversation with the one and only Daniel Sheehan. Daniel has been at the forefront of the UFO Disclosure movement, serving as legal counsel for Luis Elizondo, the former Pentagon official who investigated UAPs, with a history of tackling high-profile cases like the Karen Silkwood investigation. Daniel now focuses on uncovering the truth about UFOs and potential extraterrestrial life. Today, we'll explore the U.S. government's growing transparency efforts, including the Senate's demand for decades of UFO-related material. So get ready for this conversation about truth, disclosure, and our place in the cosmos. Let's dive in. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. Please welcome back to the Truth Be Told studios, the one and only Daniel Sheehan.
Hey, we got a live audience here. Okay,
I know.
All right.
Well, you showed up and they all showed up too, so it must be you.
Sure.
Well,
Okay.
thank you for
Thanks,
doing this. I'm excited. For everybody that's listening live or listening to us later, hey, Daniel's going to be at the Conscious Life Expo coming up in just a few weeks here in Los Angeles, February 7th through the 10th. And you have a couple workshops that you're going to be doing, I believe, during the event. And then you have a post workshop after, I think, on a Monday, right?
Yeah, I do.
Well, perfect. Well, Daniel, thank you again for doing this. And I know there's people that's going to be in the chat room going to be asking questions too. If they have anything that I think is going to be pertaining to what we're talking about, I'd love to ask you direct from them. But in the meantime, let's just get started because we have lots to talk about, lots going on, a new administration taking over, a lot of different disclosures happening, whistleblowers happening. So before we do that, I want to find out, how did a civil rights attorney get into the UAP UFO world?
Well, actually, I got into this particular world. I'm trying to keep the sun from shining all over you guys. I got into this particular subject all the way back in 1976, right after the election of President Jimmy Carter. President Carter, when he was the governor in Georgia, actually saw
I remember
a UFO, and that he had mentioned during his campaign that he was agreeing that he was going to find out about all the UFO information that our government knew and would reveal that to the public. And so that immediately after his election on November 4th of 1976, he sent for the head of the Central Intelligence Agency to be flown down to Plains, Georgia, to his home before he had even come into Washington from having been the former governor down in Georgia. And it turns out that the head of the Central Intelligence Agency at that time was George H.W. Bush, who had been brought on to be the new head of the Central Intelligence Agency by Gerald Ford after he came into office when Richard Nixon resigned in August of 1974 as a result of the Watergate break-in,
Right,
and the scandal that arose around that. So President-elect Carter asked George H.W. Bush to brief him on the UFO issue and what relationship, if any, this had to any extraterrestrial civilization. And George Bush refused to brief him, saying that he had no need to know that, and that he refused to give him the information. So President Carter, rather than taking on the Central Intelligence Agency as one of his first endeavors as the president, he contacted the head of the House Science and Technology Committee and asked to have them task the Congressional Research Service with doing a special investigation and research project on finding out all of the information that existed within the official records of the U.S. government, which are required to be filed with the National Archives, to which the Congressional Research Service is supposed to have access. And so the bottom line is that I ended up getting contacted by the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service, Dr. Marcia Smith, called me in early 1977 and asked if I would be special counsel to this investigation that they were going to be doing through the Congressional Research Service. And I cleared that with my superiors at the Jesuit headquarters. I was a candidate for the Jesuit priesthood at that point. They'd recruited me out of Harvard Divinity School, where I was doing my PhD work after having graduated from Harvard Law School and Harvard College. So I got permission to do this. And so I became a special counsel to this investigation, this research. In that context, I was given access to the classified portion of Project Blue Boy at my specific request. They asked what I thought was the most important thing to look at to begin this investigation. And I said I knew what it was. It was the classified portion. There's some 700 cases that were referred to the Project Blue Book that had never been made public, and that there were too many witnesses to them, too many photographs or films taken of them, too many credible people, in that they couldn't discount them, as a mistaken flock of birds, right, or a searchlight, on the bottom of clouds or something that were misidentified. And so they had relegated these 700 cases over into a special classified portion of Blue Book. So I said that's what I wanted to get a look at right away. And so Dr. Marcia Smith said, "Oh, they'll never let us have that. They'll never give us access to this." But much to her surprise, within a couple of weeks, they got back to her and said, "Fine, we'll bring these to him." And they brought them to the Library of Congress, the brand new building that had never even been opened yet. It was the Madison Building. There wasn't a single soul in the building. Yeah, but they brought the files down to the basement of the Madison Building and had me come over on a Saturday morning. I needed to have 2 different forms of official government ID. I went over and there were these 2 suits, at the door, who checked all my ID, and I went in and they ushered me in and told me to go down in the elevator down to the basement. And I went down, and there were these 2 other suits there meeting me. They checked my ID and they said, "Look, you're not allowed to bring your briefcase or anything." And I had just sort of instinctively on the way down in the elevator, had just opened up my briefcase and taken out a yellow pad and put it under my arm. And when I got to the basement, they took my briefcase away. They said, "You can't take any notes, you can't record anything." And so I went into this room where they were. And here were these, 3 folding tables, like picnic tables, card tables, with all of these shoebox size boxes with those little ties on them, and there was a microfiche machine, and I began to open the boxes, and they had these little canisters, these film canisters in them, and they were all microfiche. And so I began looking through these, and I came upon these photographs of a crash retrieval. There was no doubt about what it was. It was a UFO crash retrieval that was underway there. Air Force personnel all around it. They had cameras. They were taking photographs from different angles of the craft. There was actually a film camera. One of the recovery teams had, and they were filming this craft. It had hit. It was snow on the ground. That it had hit into this field and had plowed this huge gouge through the field, and it turned up all the earth and stuff in this big snow-filled field, and it lodged in the side of this embankment, and I could see it. And there were like three or four photographs of this from different angles. And so I was looking at this and said, well, "Holy mackerel! This is a live UFO here. This crashed." And I realized in one of the photos I could see I could actually see these symbols that were all along the bottom of the dome. This was a classic saucer. It was a flying saucer. That's what it was. It had the huge round body of the craft and a big dome on the top of it, and it was stuck in this obviously this earthen embankment covered with snow, and it was kind of sticking out of the embankment at a 45-degree angle, so I could see this side of the saucer with the dome. I could see the symbols along the bottom of it. So I just took out the yellow pad that I had, and I opened it up to the inside cardboard of the yellow pad, and I shrank the picture from the what do they call it? This microfiche. There was this microfiche machine where you put the film into the microfiche and you crank it by hand from one thing to another, one document to another. And so I shrank the picture down to the size of the yellow pad, and I traced absolutely detailed trace, because I knew how important this was, and I wanted to have them in the exact right chronological order. I could see like the 180 degrees that were facing me in the photographs. So I traced them, and I closed up the yellow pad, and I said, okay, that's it. I said, I'm getting out of here. So I put the canisters back in and took the yellow pad and put it under my arm and walked out. And I walked out past the guys that were there, the two suits that were standing security in this building. As I said, there wasn't another soul in the whole building.
Wow,
but they were standing
awesome,
there on duty, securing this facility. And so I reached out, picked up my briefcase, and started walking away. Started walking down the hall, and one of the guys hollered out. He said, "Hey, hold it, Sheehan, hold it." And I turned. He said, "What do you got there?" And I said, "Oh, this is my briefcase. I just picked up my briefcase." And they said, no, under your arm. What's that you got under your arm? And they came over to me, and they kind of menaced me, kind of leaned over me. And one of them took away the yellow pad, and they opened it up and riffled through the pages of the yellow pad. And of course, there was nothing on it.
You were smart.
It was on the inside of the cardboard, and then they handed it back to me. So I bring this back with me to the Jesuit headquarters. And I go in to see Father William J. Davis, who was my Jesuit superior, and I showed it to him and told him what I had seen. And he reached down and slid open the drawer to his desk, and he pulled out this little 8.5 by 11 manila folder with a little clasp on it, and he handed it to me. And I undid the clasp, and I pulled out of the envelope this 8.5 by 11 black and white glossy photograph of a UFO that was actually in flight in the sky. And I looked at him and I said, where did you get this? He said, my sister Dodie gave it to me. And I said, well, where did Dodie get it? She said, her husband, Mike, gave it to her. Mike was the chief air traffic controller at the Seattle airport. And it turns out, he said that his best friend, who was a pilot, a commercial pilot, flying cargo all around the Northwest, had taken a photograph of his own private camera out of the window of his plane of this UFO. And he brought the camera to the drugstore at that time. That's how you did it back in those times, and gave it and got it developed. And when he saw what he had, he didn't want to get in trouble. He didn't want to report this. Because he thought he might lose his pilot license for reporting it. So what he did was he brought it to his best friend, who was the air traffic controller at the Seattle airport, and gave it to him. Gotta turn this off. And so Mike didn't want to get in trouble as the head of the air traffic controllers there. And so he brought it home and gave it to his wife, Dodie. He said, here, take this and give it to your brother. He's a priest. And that's how I got it. And so that, so that we then realized at Jesuit National Headquarters that this was real, that the UFOs were real. In that we then resolved that we were going to go to the Washington Interreligious staff of all 54 of the major religious denominations in the United States and ask them to set up a special task force to begin to research the issue of UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence so that the religious community in the United States could start to get ahead of this issue, to deal with the theological implications of this. But they wouldn't do it. The Washington Interreligious Staff Council just flat refused to do it. And so I continued to work on this subject. I was there for 10 years. We developed other information, and as a result of that, I got contacted by Dr. John Mack, who was the head of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, who had been what the United States Defense Department had done, that any military officer who insisted upon reporting a UFO encounter of any kind, the first thing that happened, if they couldn't be dissuaded, they were ordered to go get a psychiatric exam. And they said, "Oh, we just are for your own protection. We want to make it clear that you don't have any mental illness problem." Of course, being ordered to go get a psychiatric exam doesn't go well for your career in the military.
Right, for sure.
But so it was, they would send them to Harvard Medical School as kind of one of the top psychiatric clinics in the world. And so Dr. John Mack, who was the head of the department, was assigned to do these evaluations of them. And so he had a number of these top-ranking officers in the U.S. military that had insisted upon filing official sightings of the UFOs that had been ordered to go get the psychiatric exam. And so he was so shocked by what he was being told by these people that he began to do further research in this. And he ended up interviewing over 100 people from all around the world who were really solid, reputable people that believed that they'd had not only sightings of UFOs, but had actual contact with some of the occupants of the UFO. So he was so stunned by all of this that he wrote a major paper on this to be peer reviewed. And he sent it to the New England Journal of Medicine. That John had won the Pulitzer Prize earlier for writing the definitive psychobiography of T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia. And so he was a published Pulitzer Prize winning author, and he'd written over like 100 scientific papers, peer-reviewed papers. So he sends this to the New England Journal of Medicine, and they refused to publish it. And sent it back to him and told him they weren't going to publish it. So John said, well, look, maybe I need to put in more footnotes or make this a little bit more detailed evidence to support it. And he did all that, and he sent it back in. And just a couple of days later, the executive secretary of the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, Arnold Relman, his executive secretary comes into Dr. Mack's office at Harvard with the envelope unopened and said, Dr. Relman has ordered me to bring this back to you and make note of the fact that it hasn't even been opened. He's not going to open it. They're not going to read it. And they're definitely not going to publish it, whatever it is you're saying. And so he was kind of floored by this, and he was upset about it. So he contacted a publisher and wrote a book about it. And the day that the book was published, it came out on the stands. The dean of the Harvard Medical School, came to John's office and told him that he wanted to talk with him about this book that he had written. And as long as he was going to be meeting with John about the book, why didn't they invite some other members of the faculty to come to this discussion? And John was delighted. He thought he was going to get to have like a whole session with his colleagues on this. And when he showed up for the meeting, it turns out that they were arrayed in this tribunal that they had convened a hearing of him, and were threatening him in suggesting that he had violated all kinds of academic protocols, that he was conducting research that hadn't been authorized by the board of the hospital, at the clinic, and et cetera. You know, so he ended up calling me and asking me to be his attorney in front of this tribunal. So I did. I came to Cambridge, and I said I'd gone to the college and the law school and the divinity school, actually, all of them. And so I agreed to represent him, and I went in front of the panel, and I asked the panel. I said, what is actually going on here? What's the nature? It doesn't look like an AAUP convened hearing, the Association of American University Professors. That it turns out that the tribunal was being chaired by Arnold Relman, who was the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, who was an adjunct professor at the university. And he was actually chairing this committee. And he said, well, that when you publish this book, the Arnoldson here, who is the head of the dean of the medical school, started receiving a lot of phone calls, and they were asking him a whole lot of questions about this, and he wasn't really in a position to be able to answer these things. So he thought he would just have a conversation with you about this. And as long as he was going to be having the conversation, he thought he'd invite some other members of the faculty. And he was trying to pass off this tribunal as like a friendly book club discussion, And I said, well, in the spirit of cooperation with you here, whatever the nature of this gathering is, I said, can you tell me, who is it that called? And there was this big deadly silence fell over the room. And he turned to the legal counsel for Harvard University, who was on the panel. And the attorney shook her head and said, no. And so Relman says, oh, I'm sorry, we're not at liberty to discuss who called him. And so I said, okay, well, in the further spirit of cooperation with you, if he was unable to answer some of these questions, what were the questions that they were asking? And again, this big silence fell over the place, and he turned to the legal counsel, and she shook her head no. And he said, no, I'm sorry, we're not authorized to discuss that either. So I said, okay, well, look, just let me, again, in the spirit of fairness here, can you tell me, are either one of the two following fact questions going to be discussed here during this tribunal, whatever the nature of it is? Number one, whether or not extraterrestrial intelligence exists in our universe. Secondly, whether at least some of these sightings of the UFOs might actually be vehicles from an extraterrestrial civilization. And Arnold Relman, chairing the committee, said, well, absolutely, both of those questions are going to be relevant to this hearing. And it's absolutely ridiculous to believe that either one of those things is true. That's what he said, And so I said, well, I guess in that case, I should probably tell you. I said, John Mack and I just spent the weekend with Lawrence Rockefeller, and Lawrence Rockefeller has agreed to finance, a grand rounds here at Harvard University on the issue of UFOs and the whole issue of extraterrestrial intelligence. So we're delighted to participate with you in this. And the legal counsel for Harvard University leaps to her feet, and she says, absolutely not. We're not going to allow this process to be turned into some kind of a circus, she said. And so I said to Dr. Mack, I said, well, John, I said, I guess we can leave now because they're not interested in having this conversation. And John was going, but wait, we need to, I said, no. We've offered to talk with them about this, to share this, but they're not intending to have an intelligent discussion about this. So we're leaving. And so I helped John get out of the chair, and we walked out. And then the fight ensued for the next 18 months. We went on and on about this. I hired local counsel. This fellow, his name is Eric anyway, I get his name around. Anyway, I hired this fellow, Eric McLeish, a local counsel in Boston, because I was admitted in Manhattan in the Southern District of New York and in Washington D.C., but I wasn't in the Massachusetts bar. So I hired Eric McLeish to be local counsel, and we proceeded to have this engagement with Harvard University, for the next 18 months. And Eric McLeish kept trying to settle the case. Kept trying to figure out how to just get him to leave. I was thinking about this. I said, "This is fantastic. This is a great opportunity. We're going to get to present information to them." But the bottom line is Eric McLeish ended up agreeing to some kind of a settlement where they would agree to leave John alone, and he agreed to adopt certain protocols regarding the investigation that he was engaged in. And John set up a thing called the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research, the peer group there in Cambridge, and I became general counsel to the peer group. And we ended up interviewing 100 people, who'd had these direct experiences. I worked with John as his general counsel for 10 years, from 1994 to 2004, when
Wow.
John was the victim of a accident. It was struck by a drunken cab driver, in London, when he was there, coming back from delivering a lecture at Oxford on T.E. Lawrence. And so that was, and then I was contacted by Dr. Stephen Greer, who was beginning this thing called the Disclosure Project,
Right.
to vet that he'd interviewed hundreds of people that had these kind of encounters or had been witness to a UFO in flight. And so he wanted me to vet these people because they were going to make a presentation at the National Press Club in May of 2001. And I did that. And actually, he asked me to be one of the witnesses, as it turns out, because of my having seen the photographs in the
Right.
classified portions of Project Blue Book. So I was one of the 20 witnesses that we presented, and I continued to be general counsel for 20 years.
That's pretty amazing.
Project. And I was later contacted by Luis Elizondo, as you mentioned, who is the head of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Project inside the Pentagon, who was in charge of investigating the UFO phenomenon. And we worked together to prepare a complaint, which we filed with the Inspector General of the Defense Department, complaining about the fact that the Defense Department was lying to the American public, and were lying to Congress and committing perjury, denying that there was anything to this phenomenon, that they didn't have any information about it, nothing to see here, basically, and they were lying to Congress. And Lou was upset about this and filed a complaint, and also complained about the fact that people in the Pentagon were retaliating against him because he had decided he was going to go to the New York Times and reveal this to them, which he did, along with Chris Mellon. They went to the New York Times. They approached Leslie Keene, an old friend of mine, who was a journalist with public radio, and she got in touch with Ralph Blumenthal, who was a reporter for the New York Times, and they put together a major front page story for the New York Times, revealing the existence of this secret program inside the Pentagon. And we went before the Inspector General of the Defense Department, and lodged this complaint against them for lying and deceiving Congress and the American public. And that's how this latest era of the revelation of the UFO phenomenon began back in December of 2017. And so since then, the last, I guess it's actually 7 years now, 3 and almost 8 years. We're going into the 8th year that I've been, actually since 2020, I've been representing Lou. And Lou has recently testified in front of the House Oversight Committee last October 13th under oath, revealing to them, along with David Grush, that this secret program exists inside the American Pentagon, where they're actually recovering UFOs and trying to back engineer them to basically generate a new generation of weapons using the technology of the UFOs, rather than really trying to come to grips with the profound philosophical and theological, to say nothing of economic and cultural implications of realizing that we are not alone in the universe, that we're not the apex of all sentient life in the universe. And we're in the process tomorrow, in fact, as we meet here today, on the 17th of January, tomorrow, on News Nation, Ross Coulthart is going to be having a 1-hour special on News Nation, where he's going to be interviewing some of the whistleblowers that we've all talked to, and presented to the Select Committee on Intelligence at the Senate, to try to get them to come forward to the American people and tell them that there, in fact, are UFOs flying around that are real, and that the occupants of these vehicles have been recovered, that they've been tested, they're proven to be non-human, but highly intelligent and highly technologically evolved, and that we're going to have to come to grips with this. So that people should tune in tomorrow.
On News Nation.
On News Nation, yeah. And we have a new Paradigm Institute that we've established in Washington, D.C. We have the main offices right there on Capitol Hill, where we meet regularly with members of the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Oversight Committee specifically, briefing them on this, trying to get them to participate in coming forward to the American people to choreograph the rolling out of this information for people, so that we can adjust our economic systems, our banking systems, our communicating with them.
And while you're doing that, I want to ask this question because recently the U.S. Senate, they directive to collect and disclose all UFO related material, which is groundbreaking. But are you seeing obstacles of implementing this mandate, and how do you ensure the compliance from these agencies are going to comply?
Well, it's a challenge. That as people say, everything in Washington is political. In that that there's political pushback coming from the private aerospace corporations that want to get their hands on this technology.
Right.
That they want to get patents on the technology. They want to own the technology. They want to be able to license it to our American government. If we want to use this to make weapons, they want to own the technology, so they have to be paid billions of dollars for the government to have it, and so they're pushing back, and they want to keep this secret and be able to own it. They want to work out legal contracts where they can be in charge of the technology. We're totally opposed to that.
Right.
The new Paradigm Institute has been created to try to choreograph this information, bring it to the American people, organize the citizenry in all 435 congressional districts, in all 50 states, and in fact around the world, to push back against this, to demand that this information be made available, and that we be allowed to participate in determining what our relationship is going to be with this extraterrestrial civilization. We can't leave this up to our military people to decide, what the relationship is supposed to be. There's an old saying, the Sufi saying is that when a pickpocket meets a saint, all he sees are his pockets. And so what's happening is the military is perceiving of this entire phenomenon as a threat. That they're invading our airspace. That they're not getting permission from our national security state officials to fly around the world. And so there are people from inside what they call the legacy group, the people that are knowledgeable about this phenomenon and have been knowledgeable about this for some 80 years. That there are people like Luis Elizondo and Chris Mellon and Colonel Carl Nell and others who are coming forward now from inside the national security state infrastructure, demanding that Congress be briefed in on this, in trying to work out a set of protocols and procedures pursuant to which the Congress of the United States can participate with the president and the intelligence communities and the Defense Department in choreographing this information and making it available to people in the world. And that's the process that's going on now. It's going to be a fairly major, significant event tomorrow that Ross Coulthart is going to be presenting a lot of this information. There could be some very major repercussions from the revelation of the information tomorrow. President-elect Trump has announced several times during his campaign that he is going to, on the second day of his presidency, is going to come forward and demand to get all of this information. And he has asserted he's going to make it available to the American people. We want to hold him to that promise, but we at the same time want to be able to set up a process, a rational, responsible process by means of which our people can absorb this information and amend our different institutions here and on our planet to absorb the knowledge of this extraterrestrial civilization and establish peaceful and mutually productive relationship with apparently there's at least 5 different species, from different star systems here in our galaxy, who are visiting our planet. They appear to have some sort of coordinated juridical structure to cooperating together, coming here to our planet. And we need to know what this is. And we need to know what the relationship is that exists between them and our national security state infrastructures. So the citizens can weigh in on how to have a peaceful and productive relationship with these people, not view them as adversaries or enemies or some kind of a threat. So that we can have a peaceful and productive relationship with them, because this is going to be a point of demarcation, similar to the birth of Christ. Actually, our whole calendars are set up that the year 2025 is allegedly 2025 years, past the birth of Christ. So that this is an event, I'm not being sacrilegious and I want to be respectful of the religious institutions, but this is going to be an event that is comparable to that, because all the rest of the future of our human family is going to be measured by this event of our encountering the extraterrestrial civilization. I see more of our people coming here, but so we're going to go for what, like 1 hour? What's our?
We'll probably go about another. I would say about 10 minutes.
Okay.
I wish we could go longer, but
I'd love to, but this is a very, very busy time, as you might guess.
Oh, for sure.
The people I'm meeting with right now are trying to figure out how to respond to. That's the reason I'm here in LA. We're in the process of trying to respond to whatever it is President-elect Trump is going to do and say, if anything. And if he doesn't say anything about this, we're going to do it anyhow.
Well, no, that's exciting.
That's what Ross is doing.
Well, so I'm excited about it. And I want to touch on this because I'm seeing this over and over in the chat room. And thank you for all the people tuning in for the first time or coming back every week, making comments and asking questions. But one of the things I'm noticing the most is I'm excited, but I'm getting exhausted from hearing about upcoming disclosures.
Mhm.
Do you feel like there's always somewhat a disclosure, just not the big bang disclosure, the big mother ship
Mm.
disclosure, or do you think those
Well,
little disclosures are getting kind of pushed aside?
well, I would say this is that the way in which this has to be rolled out to people, is bit by bit by bit.
Right.
Because like taking a drink out of the fire hose, with this information just drenching everybody all at one time, it may well be terribly disruptive,
Right.
and traumatic to people. So that what's happening is, back in July of 2023, we had David Grush come forward and announce that we had recovered at least one non-human extraterrestrial spacecraft, and that we'd recovered bodies from the craft that were proven to be non-human. And people pushed back against that so hard because they said, "Well, have you actually seen it? Have you held one of them in your hands?" And he said, "No." And so they said, "Oh, well, okay, then this is just something you've been told." And now we've got people coming forward, that Luis Elizondo and others have come forward and said, "No, this is more real than that. It's more than just are being told about this. That I can assure you, we have this craft."
Hmm.
And we have these bodies. And then when Burlinson, Congressman Burlinson from the House Oversight Committee asked Lou, said, "Well, if we got into a skiff right now, and I have the classification clearances, and so do you. Would you be able to show to me the absolute proof that would convince me as a skeptic that we are in possession of an extraterrestrial non-human spacecraft in the bodies of non-humans?" And Lou had to say to him, "I'm not authorized to provide that information to you, but the information exists." So that we now have additional confirmation that the information exists. We're going to bring forward some witnesses tomorrow that are going to present firsthand knowledge about this and some actual video footage of a real UFO. So that's going to happen tomorrow with Ross Coulthard. And then we're going to be meeting in Washington, D.C. after the inauguration with President Trump's people to get them to live up to his promises that he made in the campaign to start releasing the information. We have proposed in a piece of legislation that there be a 9-person panel put together, that all of the information that is in the possession of our government since January of 1945 be turned over to this panel, and
Right.
that they be allowed to go through it and reveal all of the information that they can reveal. All the information is more than 25 years old, and then additional amounts of information. So we've set forth the protocol in a 64-page piece of legislation that we've gotten passed by the Senate Intelligence Committee unanimously, 17-0, and passed virtually unanimously through the United States Senate. And it was blocked in the House of Representatives. We could only get 23 pages of it passed, which ordered them to turn over all of this information to the National Archives. Okay. And they've been under orders to do this. And they were supposed to present all of this by October 20th of this last year. And they didn't do it. In fact, they lobbied like mad with the National Archives and got them to agree to postpone this for another year. But it's scheduled now for September of 2025 to turn over all this information to the National Archives. And that we're saying, look at it. We went through the whole process of getting the United States Senate to set up a responsible process for this, and we want that implemented. We want this 9-person commission, panel of reviewing all this information to be put into place, and we want to have them staffed up, and we want to have them start making recommendations to the president to how to release this information to the people and how to prepare our culture on the planet. There are all kinds of geopolitical implications of this, of what our relations are going to be with other countries. How does this affect our relationship with China and with the Soviet Union? Oughtn't we as a human family to be coming together to deal with this in some kind of a comprehensive and coordinated way? The answer is obviously yes, we should be. But this broadcast right here today is right at the cutting edge of this, is getting ready to happen. And you say, oh, well, aren't people saying it's getting ready to happen all the time? We at the New Paradigm Institute have never taken that position. We've always known that this is going to be a process to roll this out. Friends of ours who are in the UFO community are constantly hoping it's going to happen next week.
I know. We all do.
But the fact is, we're in a kind of a unique situation here now that with the election of a president who is on the public record stated repeatedly that he's going to reveal all of this information, basically on the second day of his term in office. So we'll see whether he's going to do it. The New Paradigm Institute is in position to help on this, to absorb the information, to process the information, to roll it out to people in a narrative form where people will understand it and understand the larger philosophical and theological and economic and socio-cultural import of the information. That's what the New Paradigm Institute exists for. And people can contact us at the newparadigminstitute.org. It's as simple as that. And we'll work with everybody. We have courses that people can take to get information about this. Our information is totally free at the New Paradigm Institute. We did have a partnership with the Ubiquity University that was going to be granting credit degrees on this. We have decided we want to make this available for free to people. Nice. So the New Paradigm Institute is now organizing all this information as we get it to make it available for free to people. So that's what we're going to be doing. So people can contact us at newparadigminstitute.org and see what we've got already and what we're getting ready to share with you over the next weeks here.
Well, don't forget, everybody, the topics that today that we didn't touch on. Daniel is going to be at Conscious Life Expo just in a few weeks here in Los Angeles, LAX Hilton. He's going to be in the present state of disclosure. We're going to be in the audience, so hopefully you guys will get tickets, $50 in advance, $60 at the door, consciouslifeexpo.com, and you can see him in person, and probably I'm sure you'll take questions maybe afterwards, but there's going to be a lot of people there that's wanting information, and by then, who knows, we're going to be a few weeks into the new presidency, and hopefully we'll get some answers.
I hope so.
Well, okay. Daniel, thank you so much. I know you're a busy man. Go do what you need to do.
Sorry about that. Okay.
But
I appreciate it.
Of course.
I'll see you again. Come and see me.
I'll see you. I'll see you in a few weeks.
Okay. Terrific, Tony.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks a lot.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate you. Thank you, Daniel, for being here. And always subscribe, share this show, and please support people like us that try to get the word out there, the truth, and this disclosure that hopefully in 2025 will be in the forefront, and here's some amazing new information. So, but until next time, please see me every Friday right here on Truth Be Told on Club Paranormal. And until next time, take care.